Thank you very much, Amanda. My name is Jerry, and I am an alcoholic. And it's an honor and a privilege to participate in this meeting today. I want to thank you so much, Philo, for asking me to come out. It's always an honor and a privilege to participate in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And as the late, great Hal Marley used to say when he began his talk, I don't know, some of you may remember Hal Marley, attitude of gratitude, Hal, who is from Washington, D.C., a wonderful, sophisticated, active member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he used to begin his talk with, I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to be sober. I'm grateful to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that is my affirmation today. And if we have newcomers here, I'm hopeful that we do have newcomers. I want to welcome you to a completely new way of life. It's certainly the best life that I've ever known. And my sobriety date is December 24th, 1977. I'm 69 years old. I've been clean and sober in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous for 43 years. And what an adventure it has been. When I kamikazed into the program, I was literally homeless, unemployable, and suicidal. My life had completely collapsed as a result of this catastrophic illness called alcoholism. And when I came to you, I was 26 years old, and I didn't really understand what was the matter with me. I really thought that I was going permanently insane. I had lost my marbles. I thought that I was never really going to be able to make a comeback. I was living completely in a fantasy world. I was no longer able to tell the difference, as Silkworth says in the doctor's opinion, the true from the false. I had, as a going human being, as a going concern, I had collapsed and torpedoed my life in virtually every area. And I'll share with you in a general way what it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like for me today. And in my early life, I had a lot of suffering. My parents divorced when I was 2. I was put into a foster home in Pacoima. And my earliest memories of my emotions, I had 2 primary emotions. One was just an absolute constant state of fear. It was really beyond fear. It was a state of terror. And then my second emotion was the emotion of rage. So I always, from my early memories, felt like I was outside the tent looking in. And I can remember when my foster mother, by the way, these foster parents were fabulous people from Nebraska, Lucille and Ted Crandall. And from the age of 2 till age 8, my brother and I lived with Lucille and Ted Crandall in Pacoima. And they were wonderful, wonderful people who fell in love with my brother and I. They just were incredible people. The first day of kindergarten, I refused to get out of the car. They had to pry me out of the car to get me to go to school. So that was that fear that I talked about, that terror. I was a creative kid. I liked to draw and paint. But I can remember the emptiness that I would feel when my mom was going to pick us up on the weekends, and we would have the weekend with my mom, my brother, and I, and sometimes she wouldn't show up, and I can remember that little kid sitting on the curb, waiting, and my mother was a heavy drinker. She behaved like an alcoholic. She certainly drank a lot, but now that she's 90 years old, she doesn't drink anymore. She stopped drinking in her late 70s, but she just was too young when she had my brother and I, and didn't really know how to parent. When we finally did move back in with my mom, my brother and I, she was living at that time in Van Nuys, and we were latchkey kids. There weren't a lot of resources, so we would get home from school and there was no supervision. So, of course, I became a juvenile delinquent. and ran the streets. It was always getting in trouble, and this feeling of angst, this feeling of being outside the tent looking in, permeated my life, and felt it really 24/7. And I heard somebody recently say that one of the root causes of alcoholism is self-hatred. And I think from a very early age, I just didn't like myself. And I also bought that lie. This is a classic. If you're new, I heard this in my first year of sobriety, that alcoholics as a class of people, myself certainly, I bought the lie that I'm not enough. I'm not enough. And so the whole pattern of my life was based on this feeling of not being enough and tremendous self-loathing. Now, something magical happened. It was fantastic. At the age of 13, my mom had moved us over to a little bit nicer neighborhood in Sherman Oaks. We lived right off of Woodman Avenue. And I was in the alleyway with some older kids. I'm 13 years old. And they had bought that wonderful beverage, Red Mountain wine. Now, I'm not sure, some people, Philo, I see fabulous Philo's hand is going up, so he remembers that gut rot. As we are fond of saying in AA, I don't think this wine ever saw a grape, but they had a gallon. You could buy a gallon of Red Mountain wine, not a half gallon, but a full gallon for $1.49. Now, by anybody's estimation, that is a high yield return on your invested capital. So these older boys had this jug of Red Mountain wine, and they passed it over to me, and wanting to impress them, I took a couple of giant gulps, and I almost tossed my cookies. I gagged. I could barely keep it down. But something magical happened. I could feel the warmth radiating through my arms, through my legs. It was like the first time in my life, I think I took a deep breath, and life was worth living. I submit that I had a spiritual experience. My first drink. There's a reason why they call alcohol wine and spirits, because it literally alleviated all of that angst, all of that fear, all of that anger. And in a moment, I felt like life was fantastic. Everything changed in that moment. And as a 13-year-old boy, I literally made a decision. I never want to be without this feeling again. The effect that alcohol had on me from my very first drink, even though I did not like the taste of it, was incredibly powerful. And I literally pursued it through the 60s, into the 70s, to the gates of insanity and near death. And one of the great gifts of Alcoholics Anonymous, if you're new, is it diagnosed my illness. I didn't know what was the matter with me. As I mentioned, I thought I was losing my marbles. And you guys communicated something that was so vital, so important to me, was that I am an alcoholic and that it's a progressive disease, that I have an allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind, and that if I drink alcohol, it triggers a phenomenon of craving, and I literally cannot stop. And so that was so powerful for me to finally just, wow, that's what's wrong with me. Now, on top of that, I had all kinds of neuroses and self-loathing and all the other kinds of crazy things going on. But to be able to have a diagnosis for my malady was incredibly important. And you told me that without treatment, my destiny, tragically, are jails, institutions, or a premature death. And if you're new, that's not a scare tactic. That's a fact. That's what happens to people like me. And in fact, it did happen, except the third option. I was definitely, I was 6 months in the Tarzana psychiatric hospital, Tarzana Treatment Center, and I'd been arrested a few times. I never did any time other than a night or two in jail, but I had been in jails and I had been in institutions, and I had many very close calls with death, overdoses, car crashes. So I think for somebody like me, it's a miracle that I survived the absolute pummeling that I did to my body, my psyche, my mind, everything. I just was so reckless. By the time I was 16, I was an intravenous drug user. By the time I was 20, I was on methadone maintenance. I love what William Burroughs said about methadone. It's like treating a Scotch addict with bourbon. I was a pedal to the metal kind of guy. And by the time I crash landed into AA, if you looked at my balance sheet, it was just all liabilities, beginning with alcoholism and addiction, neuroses, self-hatred, self-loathing, really didn't have any skills, went to college, dropped out, really had no purpose in life. But I had one asset, and that one asset was desperation. And I was actually introduced to the 12-step program in the Tarzana Treatment Center, but I could not fathom. You guys don't take anything? I mean, you don't take a Valium once in a while? You don't take a shot at tequila? I mean, isn't that a little bit extreme? I mean, I could not fathom total abstinence. And then when I left that facility and just really went into free fall, ended up homeless, unemployable, and suicidal, I remembered that seed that was planted in the Tarzana Treatment Center, and I made that important phone call. I had there was a really a wonderful woman who was a hooker who was at the Tarzana Treatment Center who had gotten sober, and I still had her phone number. I called her. She called a man who came and picked me up and took me to a meeting. And I cannot even, there'd be 1,000 lifetimes for me to thank what AA has done for me. I couldn't thank AA in 1,000 lifetimes what it's done for me. It changed everything. It changed my philosophy of life. It changed my belief system. It changed my behaviors. It changed my actions. I had no real philosophy of life other than I was a total hedonist, wanting to get high every moment I could. And when I was ready and tenderized to the point that I was willing to go to any lengths and that desperation kicked in, I began staying on people's couches. And I was nuts. I can say unequivocally, I was one of those newcomers that was a total nut job. And I had hepatitis A, hepatitis B, hepatitis C. By the time I had gotten here, I was bloated. I was very, very sick. And but what I found here in AA was, for the first time in a very long time, was hope. Hope that maybe I could have what you have in Alcoholics Anonymous. Maybe I could have, and I got to hear these wonderful speakers like Norm Alpe, Eddie Cochran, Chuck C. Just fantastic voices in Alcoholics Anonymous in the late 70s. Clancy Imislund, Johnny Harris, Bobby Earl at that time was a tremendous inspiration. And I just jumped in with both feet. I mean, it was the last chance ranch for me. And I realized that if I did not embrace the diagnosis that I am an alcoholic and really throw myself into AA, that I would have been dead within a year. And I think that's very safe for a guy like me to say. In fact, it's a miracle. It's pure luck that I survived the pounding that I put myself through. And at this time, I was staying at a guy named Alex N., who had a little place in Culver City, and I stayed on his couch. And I had to get a job. I had no resources, so there was a place called Casa de Hermandad, which was a social service agency on Pico Boulevard, and they would take unemployable people like me and give them help them write a resume, and then help them get a job. At this time, there was a federal program where the federal government would subsidize a person like me. So if I went to work someplace, they had no skin in the game because the government was paying my salary. So if I would have told the truth on my resume, it would have said, 1969, 1970 occupation drug smuggler. I used to bring in small quantities of opiates from Tijuana. Reason for leaving that job, my connection died. You know that when you lose a good connection, this is very traumatic for a dope fiend. And 71 to 72, occupation, credit card forger. I was a pioneer in identity theft. And I got busted for that. Anyway, reason for leaving that job, I got caught. 72 or 73, occupation, I don't remember. I was living in Chicago, but anyway, but here I am applying at Merrill Lynch. Give me a shot, would you? I'm a go-getter. Anyway, so needless to say, I was not a great candidate for any kind of job, but I ended up getting a job as the night watchman at an Orthodox Jewish recovery house in West Los Angeles called Chabad. Now, I want to preface this with, you have to understand that number one, Chabad was being subsidized, so they had no skin in the game. This job required no skills. If you could fog a mirror, you could do this job. I sat in a beanbag chair and watched all night movies, and if somebody left, I made a phone call and said somebody just left and went to a liquor store. So if you were a chimpanzee, you could do this job, no problem. I approached it with vigor and enthusiasm. And 3 weeks into it, they called me in. I go, gee, maybe I'm going to be getting a promotion. They called me in and they said, Jerry, we're going to have to end our association with you. And I said, am I being fired from this job that requires no skills? They said, well, yes. And I said, why? They said, well, you seem very angry. And this gives you an idea of how I was able to handle my emotions in early recovery. I had been essentially in a Sumati tank from age 16 to 26 in a bubble where I didn't feel hardly anything. And now I'm sober and there's nothing between me and me anymore. And my emotions, I was one of those newcomers. If you said hello to them, I'd say, how you doing? I'd say, I'm doing fine, but with kind of a homicidal look on my face, and people would kind of back away from me because I was a big burly guy. And I'll never forget what a blow it was to what little confidence I had was to get fired from this job. I couldn't believe it. So I called my sponsor and I said, I've just been fired from a job that requires no skills. What am I going to do? He said, are you going to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous? I said, yes. He said, do you have a place to stay? I said, yeah, I'm staying on my friend's couch. He said, do you have food? I said, yes. I went down and got food stamps. He said, well, we have a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous that when one door closes, another one opens. I don't know when you're going to get your life back, Jerry, but if you just stay sober, it's going to somehow work itself out. And I'm so grateful that I had a sponsor to give me that input because I believed him. And I can remember being at the 2+2 meeting on Westwood Boulevard, and a guy said to me, hey, if your head hits the pillow, you're a success. And I looked at him, I said, come on, I'm staying on a person's couch. I've got no resources. What a goofy thing to say. How can you say that I'm a success? He said, because if you're sober, you have options. You have freedom of choice. And that's what I really believe is that Alcoholics Anonymous is like a portal to infinite possibility, infinite freedom, infinite optionality that I can choose to recreate my life. And wonderful people like June G, who was an extraordinary example of transformation, who was essentially functionally illiterate and would put out cigarettes with her bare feet to show how tough she was, who asked her sponsor, I'd like to do something with my life. And her sponsor said, what would you like to do? And she said, well, I think I'd like to be a lawyer. Now, in society, someone might say, well, I think you may want to just lower the bar a little bit and think about something else, but not AA. Her sponsor said, if you're willing to do what other people have done to become a lawyer, then you can become a lawyer too. And so she went to, got her GED and then went to West LA College. Then she transferred to UCLA. Then she did her undergrad. Then she went to UCLA Law School. Then she passed the bar and she became a lawyer. And that's really what AA to me is all about. It's not only about stopping drinking, but it's also about transformation and change. It's such a powerful program to be liberated from this insane, progressive, and often fatal, catastrophic disease, and then to be given freedom to pick a new destiny. It totally changed my destiny, AA. And if you're new and you're willing to take these actions, as Silkworth says in the doctor's opinion about the psychic change, all that a person has to do is be willing to follow a few simple rules. And for me, those rules are to have a sponsor, to go to meetings, to get in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous, to do the steps, get commitments, and stay active in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because even with my length of sobriety, I absolutely know that I am not cured of this illness. I only have a daily reprieve contingent upon my maintenance of my spiritual condition. And I'm a big fan of movies. I love storytelling. And by the way, you can't make the stuff up that if you're new, that you're going to hear in AA. These stories are fantastic. Redemption, transformation, change. There really is nothing like Alcoholics Anonymous. And I also want to say it's for fun and it's for free. Alcoholics Anonymous is free. And if you're in a sober living or you're in a place that's charging money, that's great. But that's not AA. AA is for fun and for free. And it may help you to get to Alcoholics Anonymous. But this is an unbelievable program. There's nothing like it. The longer that I'm sober, the more miraculous I see the program and the pioneering years. Time magazine did a piece on the 100 most influential people of the last century, Einstein, Edison, and our co-founder, Bill Wilson, was on that list. We're part of something really magical in a sense, because as I mentioned, it's a portal to these spiritual principles that I really knew nothing about. My best application of the tools that I was given as a young boy and early adulthood it got me homeless, unemployable, and suicidal. I'm always impressed with people who come to AA that had careers, that went to college, did things with their lives. I mean, I had in fact, I had one skill. I was a master at getting high. That was really the only skill I had in creating cocktails. And, I did intravenous methamphetamine. I did the opiates. I did LSD, all the psychedelics, all the barbiturates, all the soapers, all the I did all that crazy stuff. And I was pretty good at putting things together, but that was my only skill. So I did my first inventory when I had 28 days of sobriety, which will give you an idea of my motivation. I was motivated because I heard these incredible voices and speakers. I thought, wow, I better get to work. I've got a lot of work to do. As it says in the big book, a long road of reconstruction ahead. And if I can give anyone who's new a tip, this is something that really was very helpful to me in the beginning. And the only tip I can give you is obviously those rules I mentioned, basic rules there are no rules in AA, but in my view, I have to follow a few simple rules. But if you just get aggressive on the application of your 12 steps, I mean, get in it to win it. Because if you think about it, an hour to 2 hours a day of your AA meetings and then service and sponsorship, then you have 20 to 22 hours of complete freedom to do with your life what you wish. And so I did my first inventory. Another person that comes to mind that I got to hear and have a great long-term friendship with was Howard Polans, the late, great Al Sines. These wonderful mentors and friends and people that really helped me, that loved me when I was not in any way, shape, or form lovable. And so I was at a meeting, once again, that 2+2 meeting. I had done my inventory. It was not really a very thorough inventory. I was pretty shallow. I couldn't dig very deep at that juncture in my life, but I was trying. And by the way, I heard a wonderful speaker recently at the Covina meeting, a guy that I've watched grow up in the program. His name is Mike P. And he was in the Midnight Mission, and he asked Clancy, people would say, Mike, you got to stick with the winners. And Mike asked Clancy Imislint, well, what's a winner? And Clancy said, it's somebody that's in AA and trying. And I thought, what a great description. It's not the person that rolls in with the Lamborghini and the trophy wife or any of that stuff. It's somebody that's in AA and trying, and that's a winner. And so if you're new, stay in the center of this thing and keep trying one day at a time. And for crying out loud, please don't pick up a drink. It works a hell of a lot better when you're sober, to say the least. And so I was speaking. It was a 10-minute speaker at the 2+2 meeting. I had about, 90 days. They let newcomers speak back then at the meeting. And there was a guy in the meeting who was heckling me. He was drunk. And he was stoned out of his mind. And so after the meeting, we took him to Junior's, and I took his car keys away from him because he couldn't drive. And the next day he called me, he says, where's my car? I said, I've got your car. And he took me to a place in Signal Hill and helped me get a job. And by the way, he said, you'd be good at this. And so it was selling computer supplies on the telephone. It was actually a legitimate business selling on the telephone. It wasn't a boiler room. It was just a company that sold these wideband printer ribbons for mainframe computers. And when we went for the interview, I was so filled with terror and fear. I didn't say one word. I just sat there like this for the whole interview. And the sales manager he said, we guys both can start on Monday. So we both got hired. And I started to do well at that job. My first car in sobriety was a Citroen, the French car, Citroen ID19. And it has a pneumatic suspension system. You start it up and it rises up, and you can adjust the height of the vehicle. And I would buzz around that, going to my AA meetings. I would get up early, and I decided at this job, I'm going to be the best employee I can be. I'm going to get there early. I'm going to stay late. I didn't really know anything. I had no skills whatsoever, but I made a commitment to myself to keep trying and do a little bit better each day. I heard Chuck C. talk about if you just have a philosophy of doing a little bit better every day, you'd be surprised how your life will grow. So that was basically the motivation that I had. And then I got my first apartment, which was a one-room apartment at the beach house in Venice Beach. We used to say Venice Beach, where the debris meets the sea. And this was a one-room apartment. A guy that I had met at the Venice American Legion Hall was moving to Spain, and he said, would you like to take my apartment? And I said, God, I'd love to have my own apartment. I was, 6-7 months in my recovery. I was still sleeping on people's couches. And I said, how much is it? He said, it was $350 a month. I said, I'll take it. And then I was just buzzing around, picking up newcomers, passionate about Alcoholics Anonymous, passionate about the opportunity that AA presented a broken guy like me to change my life, to try to make something out of my life and stop being such a liability in every area, so selfish, so self-centered. And I remember at about a year sober, I got really sick. I had hepatitis C, and it flared up. And back then, in the late 70s, early 80s, hepatitis C, they didn't have a marker in the when they drew blood, they just called it non-A, non-B. And so I was in isolation, and the whole thing, it was kind of weird. And but Al Sines, who was at this time, I had moved to another apartment in Venice at 5 Westminster, the Waldorf, really kind of a cool old building. Had a great history. Charlie Chaplin supposedly used to have the penthouse in this building. I had a little tiny 400 square foot apartment there. And I was very sick and couldn't work. And Al Sainz came by and he brought me a television. He said, "You're going to need to, distract yourself." And when I think about all the things that opened up for me, they all opened up as a direct result of my sobriety and people either directly or indirectly in Alcoholics Anonymous. So at this juncture, I decided, I started to get better, and I wanted to start. I asked my sponsor if I could. I made the decision to become an entrepreneur, which is a fancy word for somebody who is essentially unemployable, but in order to give himself a promotion, he starts his own company. Anyway, I was actually employable at this time. But my sponsor said, "Yeah, you can start your own company." So I had saved a little money. I started a company called Omni Computer Products, serving the universe. Let's think big. Anyway, I was so filled with fear. I opened a little office in Santa Monica, and I was afraid to work. I was paralyzed with fear, totally paralyzed. And I burned through my little savings. And I realized I'd give people, I had a business card printed up. I'd give them my card. I'd say, "Just call me at home. I'm rarely in the office." So it was a total prescription for disaster. And so then I reevaluated. I did another inventory. I was afraid of success. I was afraid of failure. I was afraid. So I asked the higher power to please help me and help me get out of my own way. So anyway, I went back to work with the concept of failure is not an option. I'm going to suit up and show up. We took that little company from just me and really not knowing what I was doing. We had 350 employees in Los Angeles. We had another 400 employees in Canada. We won the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award, which is kind of like the Academy Awards for business. And I was hiring Harvard MBAs and Wharton MBAs. And when I got to the program, I couldn't find my kneecaps in a dark room. I was a complete basket case. And it was all the program and these spiritual principles and faith. You taught me about faith. You taught me about hope. You taught me about, I would hear Chuck C. He'd say, if somebody asked him a question, instead of blowing smoke, he'd say, "That's a good question. I'll get back with you tomorrow with the answer." And things like that would enable me to get through a tough situation at work. Instead of blowing smoke, I'd say, "That's a very good question. Let me get back to you." And all of these things started happening, and it was all because of sobriety, and it was because of a lot of hard work. I was a guy that dodged hard work before I got sober. I always was looking for the angle. But AA taught me about definiteness of purpose, about initiative and doing what needs to get done, whether I want to do it or not. And taught me all of these ways to get through my own self-destructive predisposition. And so at about 5 years, I got sober. I got married, met a wonderful woman who's got a year longer on the program than I do, Kathleen. She has 44 years of sobriety. We had a great son. I mean, that was really, now I had no skills in marriage. My marriage has been on the rocks multiple times. I've had to move out and I heard a guy at an AA meeting said, when you're in a committed relationship, it's like putting Miracle Grow on your defects of character. So, I mean, I'm like spazzing out all the time in terms of my ability to deal with the people that had parents in a normal upbringing would fare a lot better than I did. I just, I could watch Seal and Ted, my foster parents, but we were only there for about 5-6 years. So I didn't really have any, my mother was married 4 or 5 times, so I didn't really know how to be a husband. I didn't know how to be a father. But where did I learn how to bridge those weaknesses? From my sponsor, from mentors, from people in AA. Here's a great thing if you're new. No matter what your problem is, whether it's a spiritual issue, a financial issue, a work issue, a psychological, whatever it is, you can find somebody in AA that's been through that experience that can guide you and help you. And that really accelerates your learning curve if you don't have to figure it out by trial and error, that you can get guidance. And if you mean business in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you really want help, you will have more help than you can possibly imagine. This is a program of giving. And I didn't know, I was so selfish. And AA completely flipped that from being totally self-centered and transmuted that negative energy into being a giver, to being a positive person who gives to others, who's okay with being inconvenienced, who's okay with, if it's AA and they need me, I'm here. What do I have to do? I'll suit up and show up. And so if you're new, if you think about it, it's a catastrophic illness. And this is life or death for somebody like me. And so if you embrace that diagnosis and jump in, it says great events will come to you and countless others. Things just started changing. It's just unbelievable, the kind of changes that happened in my life because of my connection with the people and the steps in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was all the steps, because what happens, I believe, is we're tapping into a higher vibrational energy in the 12 steps and in the spiritual program of AA. And we are in the age of miracles. Miracles happen in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm not one that believes in divine intervention. I believe that we are just operating, we are boosting ourselves up to a higher use of already existing universal laws that create something that might appear to be miraculous. That's just my personal belief. And so I've had so many challenges in my life. I'm inclined towards melancholy. I don't like to use the word depression because it has too many psychiatric connotations, but I'm inclined towards melancholy. So you've taught me that I have tools. I can exercise. I can meditate. I can serve others and help others and participate in their lives and be a booster to help someone else. Another thing I used to be such a pessimist. I used to be so cynical. And AA is fundamentally a program of faith and hope and optimism and belief in solutions. We live in the solution, not the problem. And when I'm firing on all pistons, it's just a great life. It's a beautiful thing. And one of the things I used to do when my company was going, and I see my old friend Richard Kay, who I picked up out of Cry Help, and we worked together for a while. It's great to see Richard back at the meeting. I see my friend Steve. I see a lot of my friends here tonight, Chris, and just the camaraderie and the spirit of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's just filled with hope and opportunity as long as I stay out of my own way. That's the key. And I've had a lot of struggles. I went on interferon 3 times for hepatitis C. This is pre-Harvoni. So that's like I was clinically depressed for 3 years taking that ribavirin with the, oh my God, it was very difficult. It was a very challenging treatment. And I finally got rid of the hep C. And in 2006, I was able to successfully exit from those companies. I was able to sell those companies. And I've always loved movies. So I was able to produce a movie in 2019. That was a dream. I used to take my sales managers out every Friday to the movies in Westwood, which was a real treat. And so that was a dream I fulfilled. I'm 69 years old. I swear I feel the best is yet to come. I'm definitely don't have the stamina, I don't think, physically as I did when I was younger. But I feel really, because I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, it keeps you young. It keeps you excited about life. This has been a challenging year. It's been surreal with the pandemic, but there's been an incredible silver lining. This whole Zoom experience, we have people from perhaps all over the world on this meeting. I've been to meetings in France, in Paris. I've been to meetings all over the world. And I've heard speakers that I never perhaps would have heard had it not been for Zoom. And I heard a woman speak last night. These Zoom babies, the people that got sober during this pandemic, in 10 or 15 years, your stories are going to be in the big book. I mean, this is a pioneering, a historic time for the world. And so I'm really grateful to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm grateful for the guidance, the love, the support, the direction that's been given a broken guy like me. And like I said, I couldn't find my kneecaps in a dark room when I got here. I was so broken. I was so depleted and so hopeless and helpless. And AA has not only given me my sobriety, but it's given me a whole new direction in life. And it's made me a real person. I'm proud of what AA has done for me. For me, my family, it's made me into a human being who is a productive, positive person who contributes to society instead of just being a leech and a mooch, which is what I was before I got to AA. So I just want to say, if a guy like me, who was such a basket case, can get sober and rebuild his life, then think of what you can do. Those of you that are new, that didn't have some of the handicaps that I had, if you just make AA your number one priority. So I borrowed this from the late, great Vince Lombardi when he was trying to corral all of his Green Bay Packers, get them prioritized. He said, it's God, family, and the Green Bay Packers. So for me, it's AA, family, and work. AA, family, and work. And as long as I keep it in that priority, and Alfred Hitchcock, I'm almost finished here. Alfred Hitchcock said, he was quoted as saying in a book, that human beings are separated from, there's a thin membrane that separates human beings from total chaos. And I thought, wow, does that apply to me as an alcoholic? There's a thin membrane that separates me from total chaos. And what I have to do is keep that membrane reinforced with the actions you've taught me in Alcoholics Anonymous, so I don't puncture that thing and go off into the abyss. And all I have to do is keep doing what you guys have taught me to do. And if you're new, grab onto this thing. I swear to God, it's the greatest opportunity I've ever been given. And it continues. And I'll finish with this. Everybody's looking for a decent return on their invested capital today. We're in an artificially low interest rate environment. The time and energy that I put into Alcoholics Anonymous has given me an infinite yield. You can't even calculate it. It's the greatest return on investment I've ever received in my life, the time and energy I've put into AA. And if it weren't for people like you and rooms like this, Zoom rooms like this, and the 12 steps, I would have missed it all. So I'm going to keep coming back. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jerry.